what would you say the president would say, or you would say, is his greatest economic accomplishment to date? And what would you say is their greatest economic challenge for the remainder of the term?
He has believed in tariffs his whole life. And a lot of people thought that the tariffs would come in and cause a recession and cause inflation. And his intuition was that they wouldn't, and they haven't. And I think that we've learned a lot about like how tariffs fit into an optimal fiscal policy because of him. And I would say that that would be a great accomplishment as well.
Now, the tariff policy, is it complete now? In other words, has he finished negotiating the major deals with the countries he wants to negotiate with, or is it still an ongoing process?
It's an ongoing process. It's going ongoing process. I think that one of the things that people have been talking about just the last few days is, thinking about changing tariffs for foodstuffs and things. And so I think that there are going to be more changes, and there have been really big changes. And then one of the things that people forget about, like prudent policymaking, I'm sure that President Carter would have agreed with this point, is that you do what you think is right, and then you watch what happens, and then when you see things that you need to adjust, you adjust them. And so I would guess that we've made really big changes and that we'll have to make adjustments.
The theory behind tariffs, I thought, was to even out the trade balance and to some extent, and maybe raise revenue. But the president has imposed tariffs on countries with which we have a surplus, like Brazil. What's the theory behind imposing a surplus or a tariff on something like Brazil?
The point is that it's really easy to transship, and that if you're going to actually have tariffs have an effect on the U.S. economy, then you need to have kind of a tariff wall around the country. And I could say that that tariff policy is very complicated, and there are a lot of things that we're studying carefully right now in this kind of space. But for example, if you're a foreign importer that traditionally has sent stuff into the U.S., sold it in the U.S., then one of the ways you can get around the tariff potentially is you set up a U.S. subsidiary, and then you have your widget, and you sell it to the U.S. subsidiary for, say, $100. And then the U.S. subsidiary will pay the tariff or you'll pay the tariff, but either way on $100. But then the subsidiary sells the product to the U.S. for $1,000, and you avoid $900 worth of tariff. And so tariffs, if you want them to have an effect on the economy, you have to really, really look at like how are we really collecting the tariff, and how are we making sure that people aren't transshipping, people aren't funneling things through subsidiaries, and so on. And so I think that that's part of the overall calculus.